He built a fortune selling treasures on TV, but couldn't bargain with fate. At 59, Pawn Stars icon Rick Harrison just dropped a truth bomb no one saw coming. His son's life sentence is real, and the story behind it is as heartbreaking as it is shocking. Fame, family, and the fall no one could predict what went wrong? Why did a beloved reality star's legacy spiral into courtroom chaos? Buckle up, because this isn't just another episode. This is personal. Did you ever expect something this dark behind the gold and silver pawnshop doors? Or was it always hidden in plain sight? The rise of Pawn Stars wasn't born in a glitzy studio or backed by Hollywood hype. It started in a no-frills pawn shop tucked into the chaotic heartbeat of Las Vegas. No red carpets, no fanfare, just Rick Harrison, a dreamer with grit in his veins and hustle in his DNA. Long before the cameras rolled, Rick and his father Richard were grinding day and night inside the gold and silver pawn shop, a place built on instinct, determination, and an unshakable belief that buried treasure comes in all forms. Rick didn't come from privilege. He wasn't Ivy League or born into a fortune. What he had was a natural talent for spotting hidden value, for seeing diamonds in the rough where others saw junk. He poured his soul into the shop, expanding his knowledge from basic bullion to rare coins, vintage Rolexes, historic weapons, and forgotten Americana. And he didn't just read books, he devoured them. Every auction, every trade, every customer became part of his crash course in value and survival. The early days weren't pretty. The shop teetered on the edge, clawing its way through hard times. But Rick knew pawning was more than numbers. It was psychology, history, and human connection. Through sweat and smarts, he turned a struggling storefront into the most famous pawn shop in the world, and in the process, built a TV empire that nobody saw coming. But even with momentum on his side, success didn't come wrapped in a bow. The pawn business is a wild beast. One day you're making a killing, the next you're barely scraping by. Rick Harrison had to stay sharp, reading people, weighing risks, and making gut calls on the fly. Every deal was a gamble, every customer a mystery. Then came the game changer. When Pawn Stars hit the airwaves, the world met not just Rick but the old man, his straight-shooting father with a glare that could cut glass, his son Cory, trying to step out of his father's shadow, and Cory's best friend, the unpredictable and hilariously lovable Chumley. Together, they were more than castmates. They were a perfectly imperfect family with real chemistry, real tension, and real heart. America couldn't look away. The show was an instant sensation. 1 minute you're watching someone walk in with a musket from the Revolutionary War. The next it's a vintage jukebox, a one-of-a-kind comic book, or a literal shrunken head. But the real magic? It wasn't just the artifacts, it was the stories behind them. Every item carried a piece of someone's past, and Rick had a gift for unlocking those stories. He wasn't just talking dollars and cents, he was unearthing history, passion, and legacy with every transaction. Pawn Stars struck a chord because it wasn't just about rare finds, it was about people. It showed the real highs and lows of running a pawn shop, the thrill of a hidden gem, the sting of a counterfeit, the art of negotiation, and the human drama in between. Over time, it became more than just a hit show. It became a cultural juggernaut. The gold and silver pawn shop transformed from a modest Vegas store into a pilgrimage site for fans around the world. Lines wrapped around the block. Tourists flocked to meet the cast. What started as a scrappy, struggling business was now a global destination, proof that with hustle, heart, and a little help from TV magic, the American dream is alive and well in the most unexpected of places. Through it all, Rick Harrison never forgot where he came from. He wasn't just a TV star. He was still that same blue-collar hustler who built his dream from scratch with nothing but grit, guts, and a hunger to learn. And that's exactly what made Pawn Stars strike a chord with millions. It wasn't just about rare collectibles or clever negotiations. It was about people. Fans tuned in week after week, not for the artifacts, but for them, Rick, the old man, Cory, and Chumley. They laughed, they argued, they grew together. They weren't playing roles, they were living real, messy, relatable lives. And viewers felt like they were part of the family. But what happens when reality TV becomes too real? When fame shines so brightly, does it burn everything around it? As the gold and silver pawn shop exploded into a global phenomenon, the cracks beneath the surface began to show. And what followed was a family saga more dramatic than anything ever aired on the History Channel. With fame comes fallout, and the rise of the gold and silver pawn shop was no exception. Behind the glitter of TV stardom and the thrill of antique treasures, a storm was quietly building. What began as a small, tight-knit family business rooted in trust soon spiraled into a battleground of lawsuits, accusations, and heartbreak. At the center of the chaos, Joanne Harrison, the family matriarch, and Rick's own mother, who stunned fans by filing a bombshell lawsuit against her son. In a deeply personal and public legal war, she claimed that while recovering from a coma, Rick pressured her into signing away her majority ownership, 51% of the business. If true, it wasn't just legal betrayal. It was a mother's heartbreak, a fracture in a once unshakable bond. The accusations hit hard. Joanne painted a picture of manipulation, alleging that Rick took advantage of her weakened state to tighten his grip on the empire they built together. It wasn't just about money, it was about legacy, trust, and betrayal at the highest level. Fans who once admired the family's unity were left stunned, asking, how did it all fall apart? And that was only the beginning. The situation intensified after the passing of Richard the Old Man Harrison, the shop's patriarch, a no-nonsense icon who anchored the family with wisdom and steel-eyed authority. His death not only left an emotional void, but ignited fresh disputes. Joanne accused Rick of failing to report over $500,000 in business funds, transforming a period of mourning into a vicious inheritance battle. The family that once felt invincible was now unraveling in front of the world. In a dramatic move, Joanne sought a restraining order trying to block Rick from selling assets or withholding financial support. For her, this wasn't just courtroom drama. It was a desperate stand to protect her late husband's legacy and reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers. As legal costs mounted and tension boiled over, the gold and silver pawn shop's once sterling reputation began to tarnish. Loyal customers who had admired the Harrisons for their camaraderie now watched a family feud play out in tabloid headlines. Then came another blow, the COVID-19 pandemic. With Vegas tourism wiped out, foot traffic to the shop vanished overnight. The business, once a booming fan destination, was on the ropes. Revenue plunged. Emotions flared. Rick Harrison, once the calm center of the storm, now found himself fighting on two fronts, keeping the business alive and navigating the emotional wreckage of a family at war. His face showed it all: the fatigue, the frustration, and the weight of holding it all together. For fans of Pawn Stars, the legal battles and financial hardships were a sobering wake-up call, a reminder that even the most successful ventures are never immune to turmoil. The Harrisons weren't just reality TV icons anymore. They were a family in crisis, facing the same heartbreak, betrayal, and inner conflict that many families quietly endure behind closed doors. Their story had always been about uncovering hidden value, but now the most precious thing at risk wasn't gold or silver, it was trust. Joanne Harrison's lawsuit became more than just a legal battle, it was a symbol of resilience. A mother taking a stand, demanding fairness, and refusing to be pushed aside. But it also exposed the raw, painful fractures inside the Harrison family. If her claims were true, it painted Rick as a man who let success cloud his conscience. For Rick, it may have felt like a deeply personal war being dragged out in public a dispute he likely hoped would never leave the family circle. And yet, the shop stayed open. Despite the headlines, despite the pain, the gold and silver pawn shop continued to serve customers. It became a living monument of survival, a symbol of perseverance in the face of chaos. But longtime fans couldn't help but notice, this wasn't the same happy-go-lucky crew from season 1. The smiles were thinner. The tension was thicker. And the real battle wasn't over price tags, it was over healing a fractured legacy. But just when it seemed like things couldn't get more complicated, the story took another dark turn. What happens when the pressure of fame goes beyond the family drama? When personal demons start to rise and beloved faces fall from grace. The reality was far messier than any scripted drama. Austin Lee Russell, better known to the world as Chumlee, had long been the heart of the show's comic relief. Goofy, lovable, and always good for a laugh, Chumlee brought balance to the shop's serious tone. But behind the scenes, his life was spiraling. It started with an altercation in Hollywood, a drunken brawl that made headlines but was quickly brushed off by fans as a slip-up. Then came 2016. A police raid on Chumlee's home uncovered drugs, weapons, and a side of him that viewers never expected. The man fans adored for his innocence and charm was suddenly at the center of a legal firestorm. Facing serious charges, Chumlee entered a guilty plea avoiding prison, but forever altering his public image. The shock was real. The fallout brutal. And then there was Cory Harrison, Rick's son, the heir apparent. Nicknamed Big Hos, Cory had charisma, knowledge, and a front-row seat to a growing empire. But fame wasn't always kind. His personal life began bleeding into the headlines, bar fights, public urination, and a bizarre RV crash that turned into a legal mess. The party lifestyle that had once seemed harmless was now dragging the family name into the mud. But Cory's journey wasn't just tabloid fodder. It was also a story of redemption. Battling obesity and public scrutiny, Cory went on a high-profile weight loss journey that transformed more than just his body. For many, it was a powerful symbol of personal change and perseverance. Still, he admitted the truth, fame only magnified the struggles. The pressure to live up to the legacy, it was a weight not even weight loss could fix. And the scandals didn't stop there. Johnny Jimenez Jr., the shop's beloved toy expert, had been a fan favorite for years. His encyclopedic knowledge and joyful personality made him a standout on the show. But in a shocking twist, Johnny faced allegations of domestic violence, an accusation that shook fans and threatened to destroy his carefully built reputation. The cheerful collector of vintage toys now found himself under an unforgiving spotlight, his personal life picked apart by the public. For Johnny, the fallout was more than legal. It was emotional, professional, and deeply personal. A man once celebrated for his passion now found himself defined by scandal. The controversy hit hard. casting a long, uneasy shadow over his presence on the show. Fans were split, some loyal to the end, others shaken by the revelations and struggling to reconcile the headlines with the man they thought they knew. The innocence that once defined Pawn Stars had been fractured, and the ripple effects were impossible to ignore. As the scandals unfolded, the brotherhood that had made the show so endearing began to crack. The easy banter, the inside jokes, the seamless chemistry, it all started to feel strained. These weren't just isolated missteps. They were seismic events shaking the foundation of an empire Rick Harrison had spent decades carefully constructing. For Rick, it wasn't just about damaged reputations. It was about watching the legacy he'd built with his father threatened from within. Worse still, the controversies forced fans to confront a sobering truth. Their heroes were human. Chumlee's legal battles, Cory's reckless stumbles, Johnny's serious allegations, these weren't just tabloid headlines. They were real-life implosions of public figures who, for years, had felt like family to millions of viewers. The lesson was clear: fame offers no immunity, and even the brightest stars can stumble in the dark. But what made these scandals so gripping wasn't just the drama, it was how seamlessly they folded into the broader saga of Pawn Stars. This show wasn't just about antique coins or Civil War muskets. It was about people. Flawed, funny, ambitious, stubborn people trying to make a living and make sense of their lives under a spotlight they never fully anticipated. The off-screen struggles, as chaotic as they were, gave a raw and relatable depth to characters audiences thought they already knew. For Rick, Cory, Chumlee, Johnny, and the rest of the Pawn Stars family, the scandals were another brutal chapter in a journey filled with both triumph and turbulence. Would they bounce back stronger or break apart completely? That was the question burning in every fan's mind. Because what began as a feel-good hit about history and deals had transformed into something darker, something far more real. Could the empire built on nostalgia and grit survive the strain of scandal, ego, and personal demons? Or would the weight of fame and fractured trust bring it all crashing down? As the cracks widened and the headlines kept coming, one thing became painfully clear: the golden glow that once surrounded Pawn Stars had dimmed, and the future of the empire hung in the balance. Once hailed as a feel-good American success story, the Pawn Stars empire now teeters on the edge of collapse, its sparkle dulled by scandal, betrayal, and family turmoil. What started as a heartwarming tale of a scrappy Las Vegas pawn shop rising to global fame has slowly unraveled, tangled in a web of lawsuits, tabloid chaos, and personal demons. The gold and silver pawn shop, once a symbol of hustle, grit, and loyalty, now finds itself struggling to outrun the controversies that made its stars infamous beyond the screen. At the center of the storm stands Rick Harrison, a man once celebrated for his business acumen and sharp eye for value, now battling for his own reputation. The legal feud with his mother, Joanne, has become a deeply personal and public ordeal. Allegations that he manipulated her while she was recovering from a coma, combined with disputes over inheritance and missing funds, have cast a dark shadow over the very foundation of the business. For many longtime fans, it's a hard pill to swallow. The same Rick who once inspired admiration is now fighting to defend his character. And the toll is visible. The charm and chemistry that once defined Pawn Stars have been replaced by tension and silence. What was once a united family chasing the American dream now looks more like a dynasty torn apart by pride and greed. The show's wholesome image has eroded, replaced by a more sobering truth: success can cost more than it's worth. Compounding the damage are the off-screen scandals that refuse to go away. Chumlee's legal troubles, Cory's reckless antics, Johnny's personal controversies, Each headline chips away at the show's credibility. It's hard to champion authenticity when the faces behind the brand are drowning in controversy. The experts, once seen as passionate and trustworthy, now find themselves under a microscope, their every move questioned, their reputations tainted. What was once an empire built on knowledge, humor, and heart now stands as a cautionary tale. A reminder that even the most iconic brands can crumble not from competition, but from within. Even Rick Harrison, the once unshakable pillar of Pawn Stars, has seen his carefully crafted image begin to crumble. Known for his sharp wit and no-nonsense wisdom, Rick was the steady hand steering the ship. But fame, fortune, and family feuds have taken their toll. The man once revered as the heart of the shop now appears worn down by years of legal warfare, scandal, and the relentless weight of public scrutiny. The spotlight that once elevated him has turned unforgiving, exposing cracks that were long hidden beneath the show's glossy surface. Fame, it turns out, is a double-edged sword, and Rick is feeling the cut. Then came the pandemic, a crisis that brought the empire's financial vulnerability into stark relief. With tourism dried up and revenue in freefall, the gold and silver pawn shop, once a thriving Las Vegas landmark, was suddenly gasping for air. The pandemic didn't cause the shop's decline, but it pulled back the curtain on just how fragile the empire truly was. It revealed a truth that no amount of television editing could hide. The show and the shop were deeply dependent on their public persona to survive. As the headlines piled up and controversies mounted, a question began to haunt longtime fans: what happened to the show we loved? The thrill of rare discoveries and family camaraderie has been eclipsed by court documents, mugshots, and online gossip. The pawn shop that once felt like a slice of the American dream now looks more like a warning about the high cost of celebrity. And perhaps the most heartbreaking piece of all, the slow unraveling of the very legacy Rick and his family worked so hard to build. The gold and silver pawn shop wasn't just about old artifacts and good deals. It was about grit, resilience, and a belief that even the most humble beginnings could lead to something great. But now, that legacy feels like it's hanging by a thread, shaken by scandal, strained by lawsuits, and shadowed by mistrust. Still, Rick refuses to back down. In true Harrison fashion, he keeps showing up behind the counter, on the screen, and in the fight. He continues to steer the business through turbulent waters, all while trying to mend the broken pieces of his once unbreakable family. The empire may be bruised, but it's not yet broken. And Rick? He's not ready to walk away. But the challenges are great, and the question looms large. Can the empire that Rick Harrison built survive the crushing weight of its own success? What once felt like a rousing tale of family resilience, hustle, and triumph has become something much more complex and human. For viewers, Pawn Stars isn't just about vintage items or historical oddities, it's about the people behind the counter. It's about fathers and sons chasing the American dream, about laughter, lessons, and legacies. But over time, those dreams are tested by fame, fortune, and cracks that no one saw coming. What began as a celebration of hard work becomes a cautionary tale, a powerful reminder that success can be both a blessing and a burden. And now, as the dust settles and the spotlight dims, it's clear that Pawn Stars may be remembered not just for its scandals, but also for its triumphs. The show that made history interesting, turning everyday objects into stories worth telling, now faces an uncertain fate. Its future may be uncertain, but its impact is undeniable. Through all its ups and downs, the gold and silver pawn shop has remained more than just a store. It's a symbol of the adventurous journey that is the American dream. A tapestry woven of resilience, family, ambition, and yes, heartbreak. As the final curtain begins to fall on the Pawn Stars saga, fans aren't just mourning a show, they're reflecting on the real stories behind the reality. Because in the end, it's not about the items. It's about the people. And their stories, tangled, complex, and unforgettable, are what make Pawn Stars truly priceless. And he wasn't the only Pawn Stars personality spiraling out of control. Cory Big Hos Harrison, Rick's son and the heir apparent to the pawnshop throne, had his own wild streak and a few legal misadventures that kept his name in the headlines. It all started during a stop on a motorcycle tour in Jefferson City, Missouri. After a reported week-long booze bender, Cory ended up at a bar called Spectators, and that's when things went sideways. Witnesses claimed that a clearly intoxicated Cory urinated in public, then hurled a bar stool, leading to him being forcibly removed from the premises. The incident went viral, and the backlash was immediate. Cory issued a public apology, admitting his mistake, but trouble seemed to follow him like a shadow. In 2021, he made headlines again, and this time, it wasn't just bar antics. According to TMZ, Cory had rented an ERV in 2020 for a desert getaway in California. But things took a turn when the RV's owner, William Villana, alleged that Cory failed to return the vehicle on time, and when it did show up, it was in absolute ruins. Villana claimed that Cory's assistant called a day after the return date, saying they'd been in an accident and the ERV would be towed. But it took 2 more days before the wrecked vehicle arrived with a ripped-off awning, smashed exterior, and an interior reportedly littered with empty booze bottles and raw eggs. The estimated repair cost? $30,000. Worse yet, Villana said he had to cancel 10 upcoming reservations, losing out on business, and when Cory allegedly refused to pay for the damages, a police report was filed. Trying to contain the growing scandal, Cory's rep issued a weak statement. The RV's pop-outs wouldn't go back in, and it wasn't drivable. That was all they had to say. Cory Harrison may have dodged the ERV debacle in court, but not in the court of public opinion. He insisted he had the wrecked RV towed back to Las Vegas, and that insurance handled the rest. Legally, he walked away clean. But his public image, that was another story. And his legal headaches were just the tip of the iceberg. Behind the scenes, Cory was fighting a far more personal battle, his health. Years of unhealthy living and the pressures of fame had taken a toll, pushing his weight into dangerous territory. In 2010, Cory made a life-changing decision: gastric bypass surgery. The operation helped him shed over 100 pounds, but the fight didn't end there. With the pressures of managing a multi-million-dollar business, staying in the public eye, and trying to live a normal life, Cory struggled to maintain balance. Fortunately, he had one ally who stood by him, his longtime friend Chumlee, who was so inspired by Cory's transformation that he launched his own weight loss journey. The story of Pawn Stars was never just about gold, antiques, or rare collectibles. At its heart, it was a story about people, about a father and son building something from nothing, about loyalty, ambition, and the heavy price of chasing the American dream. It was about Rick Harrison, a man who turned a modest pawn shop into a global phenomenon, and about the colorful cast of characters Cory, Chumlee, the old man who helped turn reality TV into something strangely intimate and real. But success, as we've seen, is rarely simple. It brings the spotlight, yes, but it also brings scrutiny. The empire that Rick built now stands not just as a symbol of triumph, but of the toll that fame, money, and fractured relationships can take. Behind the smiling faces and quirky banter was a world that few fans ever saw, one filled with legal battles, public meltdowns, betrayals, and now, unimaginable heartbreak. Because no amount of fame could have prepared us for this. Rick Harrison confirming that his own son has been sentenced to life in prison. It's a moment that stops everything. A moment where the show fades to black and real life crashes in. How does a father face something like that? How do you move forward when the dream you've built becomes a personal nightmare? For fans, this latest chapter is devastating. It redefines everything we thought we knew about the Pawn Stars family. And yet maybe that's what makes it matter even more. This isn't a fairy tale. It's real. It's raw. It's filled with mistakes, pain, and consequences. And somehow, that honesty makes the legacy even more powerful. So we ask you, can the Harrisons ever recover from something like this? Or is this the tragic end to a once inspiring journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Because Pawn Stars wasn't just a show, it was a reflection of life itself, messy, unpredictable, and deeply human. From dominating reality TV for over a decade to the jaw-dropping scandals hiding just beneath the surface, this is the explosive, untold story of Pawn Stars and Rick Harrison's stunning confession. What began as a family-run pawn shop built on gold, silver, and grit has spiraled into a whirlwind of lawsuits, betrayal, and backroom secrets. Behind the glitz of Vegas and the charm of TV, the Harrison empire is teetering on the brink of collapse. At the heart of it all, Richard the Old Man Harrison, a no-nonsense Navy veteran and the rock on which the gold and silver pawn shop was built. His death in 2018 didn't just leave a personal void, it cracked open the foundation of the entire empire. Rick Harrison, the sharp-witted son with a nose for TV gold, turned the family business into a pop culture phenomenon. But behind every priceless antique and feel-good negotiation was a high-stakes game, one where the stakes just kept rising. Rick knew from the beginning, pawning is never just about money, it's about the story. The more compelling the backstory, the higher the price tag. From hard times and heartbreak to hidden treasures, every item had a tale to tell. But even with all his savvy, Rick couldn't predict the dark turn ahead. Controversies, legal battles, shocking family feuds. The pawn shop, once known for its charm and history, may now be remembered for its downfall. This is the rise, fall, and reckoning of Pawn Stars. And it's just getting started. The real game changer didn't come from the pawn counter, it came from Hollywood. In 2009, Pawn Stars exploded onto the scene with its debut on the History Channel, transforming a gritty Las Vegas pawn shop into a global TV sensation. Viewers were instantly hooked, tuning in weekly to watch Rick Harrison, his stern but wise father, the Old Man, his son Cory Big Hos Harrison, and the lovable goofball Austin Chumley Russell haggle over everything from ancient Egyptian relics to ultra-rare comic books. No 2 days were ever the same, and that was exactly the magic. But behind the laughs, the banter, and the million-dollar deals, a family storm was brewing. As the show's fame skyrocketed, so did the tensions behind the scenes, leading to a stunning family feud that would rock the Harrison empire to its core. Enter Joanne Harrison, Rick's 81-year-old mother, armed with a lawsuit and decades of resentment. According to USA Today, Joanne filed a bombshell civil suit in Nevada State Court, accusing her own son of betrayal. She claimed that after spending 58 years married to Richard the Old Man Harrison, she was manipulated into signing over her majority ownership 51% of the pawn shop while she was hospitalized and recovering from a coma in the early 2000s. She says she didn't understand what she was signing, and when her husband passed in 2018, things only got worse. Joanne was supposed to inherit his remaining 49% stake, but Rick, she alleges, kept her in the dark about the business's finances, leaving her without proper records for over $500,000 in cash and silver her late husband had supposedly amassed. Now, Joanne's legal team is seeking not only an accounting of the assets, but unspecified damages, a court-ordered ban preventing Rick from touching her funds, and a constructive trust over property she claims is rightfully hers. Rick, for his part, isn't backing down. Speaking to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, he flat-out denied the allegations, claiming his mother is being manipulated by people who only want her money. But this was only the beginning. The lawsuit was just the first domino to fall in a series of bombshells that would threaten to tear the Pawn Stars' legacy apart. In 2020, the glittering empire built by Pawn Stars hit a crushing low. According to the Daily Mail, the gold and silver pawn shop, which typically rakes in over $1 million annually, made a shockingly tiny $3,746 during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The doors may have been open, but the cash flow was dead on arrival. But the financial fallout was just the beginning. The legal drama escalated when Rick Harrison's own mother took things to the next level by filing a temporary restraining order against her son. Yes, you read that right? Joanne Harrison, now 81 and reportedly battling multiple health issues that require 24/7 care costing up to $115,000 a month, wasn't just going after Rick in court, she was trying to stop him cold. The restraining order was filed to prevent Rick from selling off or concealing the family's assets, particularly those tied to the late Richard Harrison's stake in the business. According to court documents, Rick had previously been making regular $225,000 payments to his mother from his father's share of the shop. But in 2020, those payments suddenly stopped. Joanne, left without her allowance and facing mounting medical bills, claimed she had no choice but to take legal action. Her goal? To have the payments reinstated and freeze Rick from taking any further actions that could damage her financial stake in the family business. Even more shocking, Rick didn't hear about the restraining order from his mother. He found out through the media. The betrayal stung. Rick later told reporters that he had made multiple attempts to reach her for months, hoping to resolve the issue privately. But every call, every effort went unanswered. The pawn shop king was being iced out of his own family, and it wasn't just about money. It was about control, legacy, and decades of unresolved tension. And just when things couldn't get any worse, another scandal was brewing. This time, it wasn't family, it was Chumlee. Austin Chumlee Russell, the fan-favorite jokester of Pawn Stars, was about to find himself in serious legal hot water. When it comes to Pawn Stars, no cast member has stirred up more controversy than Austin Chumlee Russell, the fan-favorite goofball who quickly went from comic relief to front-page scandal. According to TMZ, the trouble started back in 2012, when Chumlee was caught on camera throwing punches in the middle of a Hollywood street brawl. Witnesses say he and his friends were approached by a man who quickly got hostile, and within moments, fists were flying. The unidentified man was left bruised and bleeding on the pavement as Chumlee and his crew sped away from the scene. But Chumlee claimed self-defense. He told TMZ that the man threatened to pull a gun on them, and instinct took over. "The guy didn't even know I was on TV," he said. "He just wanted to ride in our car and start trouble." That might have been a close call, but nothing could prepare fans for what happened 4 years later. In 2016, The Chicago Tribune reported that Chumlee was arrested and jailed after a police raid turned up drugs, weapons, and the kind of headlines that could destroy a career. The arrest was part of a deeper investigation into sexual assault allegations made by a woman. And while Chumlee wasn't officially booked on sex crime charges, officers found plenty to charge him with. Methamphetamine, marijuana, and at least one firearm were reportedly seized from his Las Vegas home. Clark County records listed a staggering 20 felony charges, 19 for drug possession and 1 for illegal weapons possession. Las Vegas Metro PD spokesperson Officer Larry Hadfield told reporters that while Chumlee wasn't facing sexual assault charges at the time, the investigation was ongoing. "We're doing everything we can to get to the truth," he said. The Pawn Stars fandom was shaken. The goofy sidekick everyone thought they knew the guy cracking jokes at the counter was now facing the fight of his life in court. And just like that, the gold and silver pawn shop's squeaky clean TV image began to crumble under the weight of scandal, secrets, and a lot of skeletons in the back room. Although the sexual assault charges against Austin Chumlee Russell were eventually dropped, the damage was already done. His squeaky clean TV image shattered. And just when he thought he was off the hook, the real nightmare began. According to TMZ, the police raid on his Las Vegas home unearthed a jaw-dropping stash of narcotics, marijuana, meth, Xanax, and traces of cocaine. But it didn't stop there. They also found 12 firearms, and 8 of them were unregistered. With the evidence stacked sky high, Chumlee had no choice but to strike a deal. To avoid serious prison time, he pled guilty to 2 charges, a felony weapons charge for unlawful firearm possession and a gross misdemeanor for attempted drug possession. He narrowly dodged a prison sentence, but his reputation took a permanent hit. And he wasn't the only Pawn Stars personality spiraling out of control. Cory Big Hos Harrison, Rick's son, and the heir apparent to the pawn shop throne, had his own wild streak and a few legal misadventures that kept his name in the headlines. It all started during a stop on a motorcycle tour in Jefferson City, Missouri. After a reported week-long booze bender, Cory ended up at a bar called Spectators, and that's when things went sideways. Witnesses claimed that a clearly intoxicated Cory urinated in public, then hurled a bar stool, leading to him being forcibly removed from the premises. The incident went viral, and the backlash was immediate. Cory issued a public apology, admitting his mistake, but trouble seemed to follow him like a shadow. In 2021, he made headlines again, and this time, it wasn't just bar antics. According to TMZ, Cory had rented an RV in 2020 for a desert getaway in California. But things took a turn when the RV's owner, William Villana, alleged that Cory failed to return the vehicle on time, and when it did show up, it was in absolute ruins. Villana claimed that Cory's assistant called a day after the return date, saying they'd been in an accident and the RV would be towed. But it took 2 more days before the wrecked vehicle arrived with a ripped-off awning, smashed exterior, and an interior reportedly littered with empty booze bottles and raw eggs. The estimated repair cost? $30,000. Worse yet, Villana said he had to cancel 10 upcoming reservations, losing out on business, and when Cory allegedly refused to pay for the damages, a police report was filed. Trying to contain the growing scandal, Cory's rep issued a weak statement. The RV's pop-outs wouldn't go back in, and it wasn't drivable. That was all they had to say. Cory Harrison may have dodged the RV debacle in court, but not in the court of public opinion. He insisted he had the wrecked RV towed back to Las Vegas and that insurance handled the rest. Legally, he walked away clean. But his public image, that was another story. And his legal headaches were just the tip of the iceberg. Behind the scenes, Cory was fighting a far more personal battle: his health. Years of unhealthy living and the pressures of fame had taken a toll, pushing his weight into dangerous territory. In 2010, Cory made a life-changing decision: gastric bypass surgery. The operation helped him shed over 100 pounds, but the fight didn't end there. With the pressures of managing a multi-million-dollar business, staying in the public eye, and trying to live a normal life, Cory struggled to maintain balance. Fortunately, he had one ally who stood by him: his longtime friend, Chumley, who was so inspired by Cory's transformation that he launched his own weight loss journey. But the Pawn Stars crew couldn't celebrate for long, because the next scandal would shake the show's credibility to its core. While Rick, Cory, and Chumley were the faces of the show, Pawn Stars relied heavily on a rotating cast of expert specialists who gave appraisals, authenticated rare items, and gave fans a reason to believe in the shop's expertise. From vintage coins to celebrity autographs, these pros became fan favorites. Until it all started to unravel. One of the most notorious controversies involved Johnny Jimenez Jar, the show's go-to guy for vintage toys. In 2015, Johnny made headlines for all the wrong reasons. According to TMZ, he was caught on camera, allegedly assaulting his girlfriend outside a Las Vegas restaurant after a night of heavy drinking. Johnny tried to do damage control, claiming he was simply helping his intoxicated girlfriend walk, not hurting her. But the video told a different story. His once trusted image was left in tatters. Then came the mistake that really rattled the fanbase. John Resnikoff, a so-called autograph authentication expert, made a high-profile error in 2011 that called everything into question. While examining a script from The Godfather, Resnikoff confidently declared the autograph belonged to Al Pacino. Turns out it was actually signed by producer Al Ruddy. Sure, the mistake might seem small, but for a show built on expertise and accuracy, it was a massive red flag. Fans started to wonder, if they messed this up, what else have they gotten wrong? Was the gold and silver pawn shop really a hub of historic knowledge, or just a Hollywood illusion cracking at the seams? But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared fans for the scandal that exploded in 2015, one that nearly torched Pawn Stars' reputation beyond repair. It all centered around Drew Max, the show's trusted sports memorabilia expert. A familiar face on the series, Max built his reputation as a man who could separate real from fake with a single glance. But in a shocking twist worthy of a primetime expose, Max was accused of fraud in New Jersey for authenticating counterfeit sports items that were later sold at auction to unsuspecting buyers. According to lawsuits filed by furious collectors, Max allegedly used his TV fame to boost his credibility, luring buyers into trusting his word and ultimately scamming them out of thousands. Fans were stunned. If Max could get it so wrong, or worse, deliberately mislead, how many other fakes had slipped through the shop's doors? How many deals were built on lies? Unlike previous missteps, few rushed to defend him. This wasn't a simple mix-up. This was fraud, and people were out for blood and their money. And as the scandals piled up, Pawn Stars began to lose the very soul that made it a breakout hit. When it first aired, the show struck a perfect balance between entertainment and education. Each episode felt like a treasure hunt through history, with Rick and his crew giving viewers a front row seat to rare relics, surprising backstories, and one-of-a-kind deals. The thrill came from the unknown. What would walk through the door next? But by the mid-2010s, that magic began to fade. Reports surfaced that sellers were pre-selected, the deals pre-negotiated, and the appraisals pre-scripted. The raw, unpredictable energy that had once pulled viewers in was replaced by overly produced drama. Even the lighthearted arguments between cast members started to feel fake, manufactured for the cameras. Gone were the spontaneous moments of discovery. In their place, reality TV tropes, family feuds, and drama that felt less like a pawn shop and more like an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Longtime fans took notice. The show that once felt like a love letter to history now felt like a glossy soap opera. Even the cast began to feel more like characters than real people. Rick, once the shrewd and knowledgeable dealmaker, became the grumpy boss. Cory turned into the distracted heir with ambition, but no direction. And Chumley, once the lovable sidekick, became a walking contradiction, his goofy persona clashing with the dark cloud of his off-screen legal battles. Between the family turmoil, Chumley's arrest, and scandal after scandal involving their so-called experts, Pawn Stars was no longer about pawn deals, it was about damage control. And for fans who had tuned in to watch history being made, it started to feel like history itself. Pawn Plaza, from big dreams to a business bust. As Pawn Stars soared in popularity, Rick Harrison aimed to cash in beyond the pawn counter with Pawn Plaza, a retail center built right next to the gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas. The concept sounded like a sure thing, a tourist hotspot packed with restaurants, shops, and Pawn Stars energy. But in reality, it was a complete flop. Many businesses shut down within months, citing lack of foot traffic, and blamed Rick for providing little to no marketing support. What was promised to be a thriving hub fueled by TV fame became a ghost town, and the backlash came fast. Several business owners filed lawsuits, accusing Rick of false expectations and failed leadership. What was supposed to be an empire extension quickly turned into an expensive embarrassment. Olivia Black, fired for her past, not her performance. In 2012, Pawn Stars fans were introduced to Olivia Black, a bold and edgy new face at the shop who instantly became a fan favorite. But her time on the show was shockingly short-lived. Without any explanation, Olivia vanished from the screen, and fans demanded to know why. The answer? Nude modeling photos from her past had surfaced online, and producers swiftly fired her. The decision sparked outrage. Fans called the move unfair and sexist, arguing that her past had nothing to do with her job performance. Despite being let go, Olivia didn't disappear. She stayed in the industry, built a career as a model and adult entertainer, and even filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, though it was later dropped. Still, her story became a symbol of Pawn Stars' increasingly controversial image. The melted coin collection mystery. By 2014, the Pawn Stars cast were no strangers to legal drama, but this one struck a nerve with collectors everywhere. According to ABC News, a man named David Walters accused his niece, Jennifer Beckman, of stealing his rare coin collection and selling it to the gold and silver pawn shop for a mere $2,375. Walters claimed the shop never verified the items and instead melted down the entire collection, destroying valuable history in the process. The complaint alleged a total failure in due diligence, raising serious doubts about the show's so-called expertise. Fans who once believed in the pawn shop's dedication to historical preservation were left asking how many other rare items have been lost forever? The $50,000 coin controversy lost forever? The stakes in the stolen coin scandal were higher than anyone first thought. David Walters, the rightful owner of the rare coin collection allegedly stolen by his niece, claimed its true value was closer to $50,000, not the mere $2,375 it fetched at the gold and silver pawn shop. Walters immediately reported the theft, but by the time police contacted the store, it was too late. The coins were gone. A spokesperson for the shop told Fox News, "To the best of my knowledge, the coins are unidentifiable. They may have been melted down. They may have been sold, or they may just be sitting in buckets waiting to be evaluated." The store also disputed the $50,000 valuation, claiming the coins were worth far less than the gentleman thought. The representative stood firm, insisting that no member of the Pawn Stars cast had done anything illegal, but the damage to the show's credibility had already been done. The slow fade of a reality TV giant. Despite the lawsuits, controversies, and scandals that dogged the show's reputation, Pawn Stars managed to survive on air for over a decade, even as the format shifted from historical deep dives to scripted family drama. It maintained a loyal fan base. But by the time the 21st season aired, the magic that had once captivated millions had clearly faded. Ratings dropped, and longtime fans lamented the loss of the spontaneous, educational charm that made the show a hit. Behind the scenes, internal family conflict, mounting legal issues, and scandalous headlines took their toll. Rick Harrison, ever the savvy entrepreneur, began to redirect his energy into real estate ventures and other business opportunities. Pawn Plaza may not have lived up to its promise, but the gold and silver pawn shop remained a Las Vegas staple. As for the show's future, no official cancellation has been announced, but Pawn Stars has become a shadow of its former self, its once golden brand now tarnished.